Now, just for the sake of experiment, right now, write out in your mind, just mentally, the first one, number one. Surely everybody in this room can think of one trait of personality that you'd like to change. You're not going to do anything about your defects until you take inventory of them and find out what they are, and get them on paper where you can see them, and then start in doing something about them. And after you discover these 5 traits in connection with which you need to use self-discipline for improvement, you start in immediately to develop the opposite of those traits. If you're in the habit of not sharing your opportunities or your blessings with other people, start in sharing them, no matter how much it hurts. Start in where you are. If you are greedy or anything of that sort, start in sharing. If you've been in the habit of passing on a little gossip to somebody, stop that for all time to come. Just stop it and start passing on, not gossip, but what? Complimentary things. You'd be surprised. Why, you see a man blossom out, he'll be a different person if you start telling him about some of the things that you know are good about him. I don't rub it on too thick. If you do, he'll wonder what you're after. Be reasonable about it. When anybody walks up to me and shakes my hand and says, Napoleon Hill, I have always wanted to meet you. I appreciate so much the books that you read, and I just wanted to tell you that I have found myself, I've been a success in my profession or business, and I owe it all to Think and Grow Rich or to the Law of Success. I know that that man is telling the truth because I can tell by the way, the tone of his voice, the look in his eye, and the way he takes hold of my hand. And I appreciate it. Now, if he stood there and rubbed it on, out of proportion to what I deserve, I would know right away that he's getting ready for a touch of some sort. So you do have to be, you do have to use discretion. Now then, next, make up a list of all the traits of personality of those nearest to you which you believe need to be improved by self-discipline. Now, you'll have no trouble at all making up that list. You can find that one very easily. I want you to notice the difference as to the ease with which you find that, carry out that transaction, and the one where you're looking into your own life for traits of character that need to be changed. Self-examination is a very difficult thing. Did you know that? Very difficult. Because well, why? Why is it difficult? Because we are biased in our favor. We think that whatever we do, no matter how it turns out, if we did it, then it must be right. And if it doesn't turn out right, it was always the other fellow's fault, not ours. Always. Some of these days, I'm going to have somebody walk in and tell me that, and there are plenty of students who can do that, walk in and tell me that they had been at odds with somebody for a long time, only to find out when they got into this philosophy that the trouble was not with the other fellow, it was with themselves. And they started through self-discipline to improve themselves, and lo and behold, when they got their own house clear, the other fellow's house was also clean. And that's the way it'll work out. It's astounding as to how many motes you can see in the other fellow's eye when you're not looking for those in your own eye. I think that everybody, before he condemns anybody, should go in before a looking glass and say, now look here, fellow. Before you start condemning anybody, before you start passing out gossip about anybody, you look yourself in the eye and find out if you have clean hands. Remember that passage in the Bible? He who's without sin among you, let him cast the first stone. All right. Cast the first stone first before you commence condemning other people. And when you make a practice of that, you'll get to the point at which you can forgive people for almost anything. Next, what is the most important form of self-discipline which should be exercised by all who aspire to outstanding success? Well, now, what's the most important form of self-discipline? There's just one. It's outstanding.
Control of thought.
Now, of course, the control of your thoughts, the control of your mind. As a matter of fact, there's nothing else of importance in the world, is there, except the control of your mind. If you control your own mind, you'll control everything that you come into contact with. You really will. You'll never be the master of circumstances. You'll never be the master of the space that you occupy in the world until you first learn to be the master of your own mind. You'll never will. Now, Mr. Gandhi, you've heard me speak of him many times in biding his time to gain freedom of India, used these 5 principles. Definiteness of purpose. He knew what he wanted. Applied faith. He began to do something about it by talking to his fellow men, indoctrinating them with the same desire. He didn't do anything vicious. He didn't commit any acts of mayhem or murder. Then third, by going the extra mile. And fourth, by forming a mastermind, the like of which this world probably has never seen before, with at least 200 millions of his fellow men all contributing to that mastermind alliance, the main object being to free themselves from India without violence. And fifth, self-discipline on a scale without parallel in modern times. Now there are the elements that made Mahatma Gandhi the master of the great British Empire. No doubt about it. Self-discipline. Where in the world would you find a man that would stand all of the things that Gandhi stood, all of the insults, all of the incarcerations that he went through, while standing his ground and yet not striking back in kind? He struck back on his own ground with his own weapons. And that's a very safe thing to do. Select your own, if you have to go to battle with somebody, select your own battleground, select your own weapons, and then if you don't win, it's your own fault. I want you to remember that. I want you to remember that because you're going to have battle to do in one way or another throughout life. You're going to have to plan campaigns to put yourself across, to remove opposition out of your way. You've got to be smarter than your opposition or your enemies. And the way to do it is not to strike back on battlegrounds of their choice, with weapons of their choice, but to select your own battleground and your own weapons. Does that mean anything to you, what I'm just saying? I don't know how much it means to you now, but the time will come when it will mean something to you. When you've got a problem to solve, somebody's opposing you, you've got to go around somebody. Then you will think of this lecture that I delivered here tonight, wherein I said, choose your own battleground and choose your own weapons. Condition yourself first for the battle. By making up your mind that you're not under any circumstances going to try to destroy anybody or to do anybody any injury other than that of defending your own rights. And when you take that attitude, I want to tell you that you've just as good as won before you ever start. And I don't care who your adversary is, how strong he is, or how smart he is. If you use those tactics, you're bound to win. Create a system whereby you take full possession of your own mind and keep it occupied with all the things, circumstances, and desires of your choice, and strictly off of the things you do not want. Now, how do you go about keeping your mind off of things you don't want? Will you tell me that? I want to see if you have a clear idea. Why, of course, that's an elementary question. And I didn't mean to insult your intelligence by asking it. I only wanted to emphasize it by having you tell me.